A serious warning about the millions of dollars Americans rely on for retirement. More than 62 million people get benefits from the Old Age and Survivors Insurance Trust Fund. A new government analysis says in just 6 years, the fund will only have enough money to pay 78% of its scheduled benefits.
In 1935, when Social Security was signed into law, benefits were guaranteed to be tax-free. That promise lasted 47 years. Then, in 1983, Congress changed it. And since that day, the thresholds that determine how much of your Social Security gets taxed have never once been adjusted for inflation. Not in 1990, not in 2000, not in 2010, not today. A system originally designed to tax only the top 10% of earners is now taxing roughly half of every American collecting Social Security. My grandparents called me last week. They had just opened a letter from the IRS and they were panicking. Not because they did something wrong, not because they missed a payment, because they were looking at a tax bill on money the government promised would never be touched.
The president promised during the election no taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime, no taxes on Social Security. The first two, partially.
And if you are over 60 and receiving benefits right now, there is a very good chance you are in the exact same situation. There are 74 million Americans collecting Social Security today. Most of them are in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. They are people who woke up at 5 in the morning for decades, who worked through bad knees and bad backs and jobs they did not always love, because that was what you did when you had a family to feed. Every single paycheck, Social Security was taken out before they ever saw the money. For 30 years, 40 years, sometimes longer. They were told that money was going somewhere safe, that it would come back to them when they needed it most. And now, in the years when most of them are living on fixed incomes and watching every dollar, the government is sending them tax bills on the money they were promised was theirs. That is not a technicality. That is a betrayal. And here is how Congress pulled it off without most people ever noticing. They did not vote for a tax increase on retirees. That would have made headlines. Instead, they just froze the thresholds in 1983 and walked away. Every year since then, Social Security has sent out cost of living adjustments to help seniors keep up with inflation. And every one of those COLA increases quietly walked more retirees over a tax threshold that was never going to move. The line stayed still. An entire generation of elderly Americans kept drifting toward it. Nobody called them. Nobody warned them. They just started getting letters. Now let me show you exactly how this tax works, because most people over 60 who are getting hit by it do not fully understand the mechanics, and that confusion is making it worse than it needs to be. The IRS does not look at your Social Security check alone to decide how much of it gets taxed. They look at something called provisional income. Think of it as a bucket that you fill up with 3 things. The first thing is every other source of income you have. Pension payments, 401k withdrawals, part-time work, dividends, capital gains. All of it goes in. The second thing is any interest you earn from tax-exempt bonds like municipal bonds. And the third thing is exactly half of your total Social Security benefit for the year. You add all 3 of those together, and that is your provisional income number. That is the number that determines how much of your Social Security check gets taxed. Now, here is where a lot of seniors get blindsided. They look at their Social Security amount and think it is modest enough to stay under the radar. But the moment they start pulling from a traditional IRA or a 401k to cover groceries or a medical bill or home repairs, every dollar of that withdrawal goes straight into the first bucket and pushes their provisional income higher. A retired couple pulling just $1,000 a month from a 401k can cross the first threshold before they even realize what happened. And nobody sat them down and explained that.
At this point, based on projections of the money coming into Social Security as well as that being used by it, it will run out in 2032. Now, what does that mean? If the average benefit for retirees, people who are on Social Security, is about $2,000 a month, that's a $500 cut to Social Security.
Once you have your provisional income number, here is what happens to it. For single filers, if that number is below $25,000, none of your Social Security is taxed. Between $25,000 and $34,000, up to 50% of your Social Security becomes taxable income. Above $34,000, up to 85% becomes taxable. For married couples filing jointly, the safe zone ends at $32,000. The middle zone runs to $44,000. Above that, up to 85%. Those numbers have not moved since 1993. A couple in their 70s living on a modest fixed income in 2026 is being measured against a threshold written 33 years ago when everything cost less and their social security check was smaller. Before anyone panics about that 85% number, the way my grandparents did, let me explain what it actually means, because the government has done a masterful job of letting people assume the worst. It does not mean 85% of your social security is taken away from you. It means 85% of your benefit gets added to your taxable income, and then that combined amount gets taxed at whatever your normal income tax rate is. If you are in the 12% bracket, you are paying 12 cents on every dollar of that 85%, not 85 cents. The confusion around this number alone has caused more panic in more living rooms than almost anything else in retirement planning. Let me walk through 3 real situations so you can see where different seniors actually land. First situation. A retired couple, both in their early 70s, living entirely on Social Security. Together, they collect $48,000 a year in benefits. No pension, no IRA withdrawals, no other income. Their provisional income is just 50% of their Social Security, which comes to $24,000. That sits below the $32,000 threshold for joint filers. 0% of their benefit is taxed. Not a dollar. If this is your situation, you can breathe. Second situation. Same couple, same $48,000 in Social Security, but they are pulling $1,000 a month from a 401k to cover the gap between their benefit and their actual expenses. That is $12,000 a year going into bucket 1. They also have a small municipal bond fund paying $1,200 a year in interest. Their provisional income is now $37,200. That clears the first threshold of $32,000 by $5,200. 50% of that excess, which is $2,600, becomes taxable Social Security income. At a 12% tax rate, the actual additional tax is around $312 for the year. Frustrating, but manageable. Third situation, same $48,000 Social Security benefit, but this couple is pulling $60,000 from retirement accounts and has $10,000 in municipal bond interest. Their provisional income jumps to $94,000. Both thresholds are crossed. 85% of their Social Security benefit, which is $40,800, becomes taxable income. At a 22% bracket, the federal tax on that Social Security alone is nearly $9,000. That is real money. That is a car payment. That is a year of groceries for a lot of people in their 70s, living carefully on what they have.
The larger the tax increase workers will face and the deeper the benefit reduction retirees will endure. I have a plan to save Social Security. Congress cannot wait any longer. Let's get it done. As recent projections show that a trust fund underpinning Social Security will run out in 2032. They have prompted lawmakers to start debating potential solutions to this looming benefits cliff right now. He said Social Security is going to be insolvent, and when that happens, there will be a cut of 22% to 25% in someone's benefits if we follow.
And there is one more thing about those municipal bonds that almost no retired person knows until it is too late. People buy them specifically because the interest is tax-free, and the interest itself is tax-free. That part is true, but it still gets counted in your provisional income calculation.
Want to cancel our subscription to the IRS. I've been trying to cancel my subscription for decades, but yeah, nice try. We're not going to do it, particularly with those people receiving Social Security benefits. So we're going to get into who has to pay Social Security, who has
https://www.youtube.com/watch $VCCLNOXTDQHG00:33 to 00:46. The IRS specifically wrote that in to prevent people from sheltering income there. So a 70-year-old who put money into municipal bonds thinking they were being smart and protecting themselves from taxes finds out later that those bonds were silently pushing their Social Security into taxable territory the whole time. The door was closed before they ever arrived. Now, here is what people in their 60s, especially people who have not yet started claiming, can actually do about this. If you have money sitting in a traditional IRA and you have not started collecting Social Security yet, you have a window right now to do Roth conversions. Moving money from a traditional IRA into a Roth means you pay the tax on it once today. But from that point forward, every withdrawal from that Roth account is invisible to the IRS when it comes to Social Security taxability. It does not go into any of the three buckets. It does not affect your provisional income at all. For a 63 or 64-year-old who is a few years away from filing, this is one of the most valuable planning moves available, and most people have never heard of it. For those already collecting, the sequencing of where you pull your income from matters more than most people realize. In years when your income is already running high, pulling from a Roth instead of a traditional IRA keeps your provisional income lower and can move you from the 85% taxable scenario down into the 50% scenario or even the zero zone. A few $1,000s of difference in where that income comes from can mean a completely different tax outcome on your Social Security check. The people most affected by all of this are not wealthy retirees gaming the system. They are 68-year-old women who worked in schools and hospitals for 35 years. They are 74-year-old men who drove trucks and poured concrete and assumed that the deduction on their paycheck was a promise being kept. They did everything right. They showed up. They paid in, and now they are navigating a tax structure that has not been updated since their grandchildren were in diapers, built by a Congress that never had to publicly admit it was raising their taxes because the math did it for them instead. That is what my grandparents were panicking about, and now at least they know why.